Well, the Republican slugfest will continue weeks after weeks. I'm sure Mitt Romney wished he could have wrapped it up yesterday, but it didn't happen that way. But he won some significant ones. He won Ohio and various others. Santorum picked up Oklahoma and Tennessee and I believe Idaho, and Newt Gingrich got Georgia to nobody's surprise. But in any event, it's going to be keeping on.
It sure is, Pat. And comparing himself to the tortoise, Newt Gingrich says, don't count him out. John Jessup has a story.
The Republican battle for the White House is far from over, as Super Tuesday allowed the GOP frontrunners to put key states in their win column.
We're going to take your vote, a huge vote tonight in Massachusetts, and take that victory all the way to the White House.
Former Governor Mitt Romney won 6 states, including his home state of Massachusetts and the big prize, Ohio. Those primary wins put him on top of the delegate count ahead of the 3 other Republican challengers. And Rick Santorum continued his steady sweep, picking up Tennessee, Oklahoma, and North Dakota.
We are in this thing not because I so badly want to be the most powerful man in this country. It's because I want so badly to return the power to you in this country.
Newt Gingrich squeaked out 1 win, holding his home state of Georgia. Trailing in the polls and the delegate race, the former speaker said he's up against the establishment, the media, Wall Street, and negative ads. But don't count him out.
There are lots of bunny rabbits that run through. I'm the tortoise. I just take one step at a time.
As for Ron Paul...
Are we going to win? Yeah! We always win, right?
Not quite. The Texas congressman didn't pick up any Super Tuesday wins. While the candidates trade barbs, they're also setting their sights on their main opponent, defeating President Obama in November. With 5 months to go before Republicans select their nominee, voters are still up in the air about the candidates. This woman in Tennessee had a tough time choosing.
To vote by true values and such would place me voting for Rick Santorum.
But in the end, that's not how she voted.
I had to place my vote for Romney today. I think he's more presidential.
The primary challenge in the race for the White House isn't letting up. The next contest is in Kansas this weekend, and then on to Alabama, Mississippi, and Hawaii next Tuesday. John Jessup, CBN News, Washington.
Well, our political correspondent David Brody is with us from Washington. David, have you been talking to any of the Romney staff, and what are they telling you?
Well, you know, the Romney staff is clearly seeing this as a big victory. Look, they won 6 states. They won more states, more delegates. And yet Romney, quite frankly, Pat, is a walking asterisk. I mean, you know, this is a guy that, you know, has done well. I mean, he did well on Super Tuesday, but he can't win in the South. And, you know, Virginia really wasn't contested, and Florida isn't much of a southern state as it is, you know, from a traditional standpoint. He hasn't sealed the deal with conservative voters. And he's winning by dropping a lot of money on Santorum and, of course, before that, Gingrich. And so Romney travels around the country with an asterisk, and that is the problem for him at this point. And look, the truth be told, if Santorum had the money to compete with Romney in Ohio, probably be a different story. But he doesn't. And so, does message matter? Yes. Does organization and money matter? Even more so, Pat.
What about some of those Santorum gaffes? You know, the whole business about contraception, man, that really set a bunch of women's teeth on edge.
Yeah, I tell you what, one of the things Santorum needs to work on is his movements in the post, if you will, in terms of basketball. In other words, his pivot foot. He needs to work better at pivoting away from those social issues. It doesn't mean he shouldn't talk about the social issues, but when they go more than 20 seconds, you know, he likes to wax poetic about everything. He needs to be able to weave his narrative of faith and public policy together, but at the same time, be able to not get trapped on those social issues, which the media loves to turn into a 24/7 love fest.
Newt Gingrich seems like to me he's out, he's talking about he's the tortoise and the bunny rabbits are going to get tired after a while. He wins Georgia. What else? He's got South Carolina, and he talks about a southern strategy. What do you think?
Well, look, I mean, he's won South Carolina. He's won Georgia. Then look what's coming up next week. In a week's time, we're going to have Mississippi and Alabama. He's expected to do very well there. So going forward, I mean, he at least feels like he's a viable candidate. The problem for Gingrich is he may be viable, but pretty much in the South. I mean, where else is he winning? You know, if you look around on Super Tuesday, he had third and fourth place finishes. I mean, he even didn't finish second in Oklahoma. So, I mean, he's got issues for sure. But the question is, Santorum and Gingrich going for that anti-Romney vote, and at some point you would think there'd be a conversation between the two to say, hey, let's get together and go one-on-one against Romney. But even if they do have that conversation, it may be too little too late.
Well, it's true that if he were out and it was one-on-one, it looks like Santorum would really be winning, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't think there's any question about that. You know, one of the things with Santorum is what we've seen is that many of these states, if you look at the actual map, and there's a lot of purple, if you will, for Santorum, right in the heartland of the country. I mean, he's winning those folks. Remember, Ohio, even though it was close, or even though Romney won, Santorum actually did very, very well there. He was outspent 5-1 and still almost won. Imagine what he would have done if he had Romney's money.
Well, there's one thing. They talk about weakening the candidates, but the truth is, they're going to be able to build organization in every one of these states to come back in the general, so it isn't all a loss like the pundits are saying.
Well, that's right. And, you know, here's the other thing. You got to remember that Gingrich and Santorum, you know, there's been a lot of folks calling for their ouster from this race and get out of the race and let Romney move on. But let's back up for a moment. We've got Texas still out there. That's going to be in May now. We will also have California coming in June, potentially, if it even gets that far, which I think it may indeed get that far. The other part of this here is that Santorum and Gingrich, Pat, they truly believe that Romney is not authentic, and they don't believe he is going to be the best general election nominee. They talk about Obamacare. They say you take that off the table. I mean, it's a legitimate point that they're making. The question is, are voters going to buy it? And Romney has been saying for a long time he's the Mr. Jobs guy. He's the economic guy. He's Mr. Fix-It. So, you know, that narrative has taken hold. Whether or not they can change that, well, we'll see.
You don't have any word that maybe he's behind the scenes helping Newt's campaign to stay alive. He needs him in the race, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, no, absolutely. And, you know, everything has fallen actually pretty well for Romney. You know, look at the flavor of the month as we saw, you know, everything from Herman Cain to Rick Perry, just onward and onward. There's always been a situation where Romney just kind of skates through because everybody else is fighting against each other. If you think about it, Santorum and Gingrich have never had the one-on-one battle with Romney. Now, you might say, well, Michigan was one-on-one because it was Romney and Santorum, and Ohio was one-on-one Romney and Santorum. But if you look at the numbers, Gingrich was in the race. He was taking 14 to 15% in Ohio and in Michigan as well. And so if one of those folks are out, it makes a big difference. I think we've still got another twist and turn in this race, and I'm just ready for the soap opera music. As a matter of fact, I hear it now, Pat.
Well, the fat lady hadn't sung yet, but she's on the stage getting ready to. David Brody, thanks for being with us, and you can always get the latest on the presidential race by checking out David's blog, The Brody File. He's on CBN.com. Well, Lee Webb has the rest of our top stories from the CBN newsroom. Lee.
Pat, House Speaker John Boehner led a group of congressmen from both parties that met with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. They wanted to show their support for the Jewish state in its standoff with Iran.
The United States Congress will always stand by Israel, and the United States Congress will never allow Israel to stand alone. The looming threat of nuclear Iran cannot be ignored. Ambiguity could lead to serious miscalculations, which is what we collectively hope to avoid.
So this is about Israel, our relationship with them, our support for their security, preserving and strengthening the qualitative military edge.
Congress reportedly plans new sanctions on all Iranian banks, and the U.S. and Europe are starting new talks now with Iran over its nuclear program. But Iran has a history of agreeing to talks when it feels threatened, and Western leaders have grown skeptical that Iran will bargain in good faith, Pat.
I couldn't believe the president. I should believe it, but I couldn't believe that he thought what he was saying had any substance when he said, well, we're going to go back to more talks, and we're going to have to await the outcome of talks. They've been talking and talking and talking for years. What they don't seem to understand is that the Iranians are fanatic Muslims. They have a deep-seated belief that the Mahdi, the 12th Imam, is going to come and that they're going to help bring him in. And the way to do it is through creating chaos. They want some kind of a showdown, and they're going to continue to build this nuclear facility as fast as they can, and they'll talk till the cows come home. But in the process, they'll be sneaking nuclear reactors and the necessary equipment to build a bomb, and many bombs if possible. It's going to be dangerous. It'll be unsettling to the Middle East. And like it or not, Israel is going to have to take action. War is obnoxious. The president warned about war, and in a sense, he's right. But something's got to happen. The other thing would have been to have undermined the regime. I think there's still time to do that if there was a coalition of college students and labor unions. They hate the mullahs. And if we gave them any kind of encouragement, but when they revolted, did Obama do anything? He sat on his hands and didn't say a word. That would have been a turning point. Lee?
President Obama says it's time to begin moving our troops out of Afghanistan. He says the recent violence aimed at American troops there following the Quran burning incident a couple of weeks ago supports the need to start withdrawing. 6 Americans were killed in retaliation for the accidental burning of the Quran. 23 senators, mostly Democrats, though, circulated a letter calling for an early withdrawal for another reason. It says there's something fundamentally wrong with spending $88 billion for national building in Afghanistan while we're asking Americans to make tough cuts here at home. Investors are looking and hoping for a rally after Tuesday's sharp sell-off in the markets. Stocks took their biggest hit of the year. Gold has dropped more than 6% since the end of February, and oil has fallen around 5%. Many analysts had expected corrections in the markets. Prices had been rising since the beginning of the year. Some still look for higher stock prices in the months ahead. That's because they believe the economy will continue on its path of slow growth. Do you agree, Pat?
No, I don't. I think the stock market has had it, and I think it's going to start going down. I think when trouble continues to brew in Europe and when the debt situation here at home gets worse and worse, and it's getting worse and worse, and we have political gridlock, which we have in Washington right now, I think people are going to say, well, I don't need to be in the stock market. They're going to start pulling out. And you know, regrettably, with gold, I manage a good deal of gold and silver on our so-called treasury account at CBN, and I sold all of it several days ago because I thought gold and silver were coming down, and lo and behold, they did. So it'll be a while before there's any revival or renewal in that bull market for those metals and for the stock market itself. It's not going to come. This year can be a tough year for the market.
A deadly tragedy in Africa. An explosion at a munitions depot in the Republic of Congo destroyed 2 churches packed with worshipers. The blast also destroyed a hospital and several houses. At least 200 people are known dead and hundreds more have fled their neighborhoods. Firefighters were able to keep a fire from reaching a second depot and setting off more explosions. The father of an American teacher killed in Iraq is offering forgiveness to the family of his son's killer. Dan Small traveled to Iraq for his son Jeremiah's funeral. A student killed Jeremiah last week during a classroom dispute. The 18-year-old shooter then turned the gun on himself. Jeremiah was a devout Christian who prayed regularly in front of his students. The shooter's father apologized to Small at the funeral. Small says his family has no hatred for that family. You can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.